Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a seriously complex layer of geopolitical analysis from commentator Victor Davis Hanson. He recently broke down the administration's Memorandum of Understanding with Iran, and wow, his take reveals a massive, hidden layer of domestic politics that's actually driving foreign strategy.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our chronological roadmap for today. First, the MOU explained, then we'll look at the midterm factor, dig into economics and gas prices, explore the disproportionate response strategy, and we'll wrap things up with post-election scenarios.
All right, Section 1, the MOU explained.
To really grasp the mechanics here, we need to consider this specific timeline. Day 1 triggers a 60-day hiatus, which basically pauses what had been 40 straight days of active bombing. But, as Hanson points out, the 60 days on paper, that isn't actually the primary objective. Rather, it acts as a mechanism to buy a critical 4-month timeout. A timeout designed to stretch right past the midterm elections, essentially to avoid having an active war dominating the news cycle.
And this brilliantly illustrates the intense pushback this maneuver is getting from 3 totally distinct domestic camps. First, you have the political left, who Hanson notes will reflexively criticize the action regardless of the outcome. Meanwhile, you've got the Carlson right, who fear the U.S. is just being dragged into yet another forever war, driven by undue foreign influence. And finally, pro-war supporters. They argue the MOU is way too lenient, and they cite immediate violations, like the recent drone strike on a cargo ship, as proof.
Moving right along to Section 2, the midterm factor.
This really brings us to the hidden domestic engine driving all of this foreign policy. To understand the stakes, Hanson points to a severe political fear from the administration about losing Congress. Quote, "A circus of lawsuits, lawfare investigations, paralyzed Donald Trump's final 2 years in office with non-stop impeachment hearings." End quote. The core argument here is that this whole 4-month Middle East pause is directly tied to avoiding that exact kind of domestic paralysis.
Which brings us to Section 3, economics and gas prices.
So you might be wondering, how does a foreign conflict practically impact those midterms? Well, it all comes down to inflation. Just take a look at these numbers. Nationwide average gas prices were down near $2. Then they spiked rapidly to $4 as tensions flared up, before finally settling around $3.20. Because gas prices are literally the most visible driver of inflation for everyday voters, an active conflict spiking those prices right before an election, that becomes a massive political vulnerability.
And, it's not just American drivers at risk here. If things escalate and the Strait of Hormuz is closed, that effectively cuts off vital energy supplies. We're talking about heavily spiking global pressure that would basically ruin European and Asian economies. It's an absolutely catastrophic global scenario, and it's exactly what this MOU is attempting to delay.
Okay, Section 4, disproportionate response. So with a timeout firmly in place, how does the U.S. actually prevent provocations during such a tense time? Hanson suggests it requires a doctrine of overwhelming retaliation. The logic is that because Iran actually wants higher gas prices to influence the midterms, the U.S. has to reply disproportionately to any instigation. Think about it like this. If 1 missile is fired by Iran, the U.S. reaction has to be 10 missiles or 10 full days of attacks. It has to be a severe deterrent to ensure that the 60-day MOU isn't just viewed as weakness.
Now, if provocations continue without any restraint, the next tactical step would be targeting what are known as dual-use infrastructure. What does that mean? Well, these are facilities vital to military operations, sure, but they're also essential for civilian life, things like bridges or power grids. Citing past presidents from Clinton in Serbia and Obama in Libya, Hanson explains that this represents a severe escalation, but it's kept on the table specifically to enforce the peace.
And finally, Section 5, post-election scenarios.
What actually happens when that 4-month timeout ends and the midterms are finally over? Well, Hanson forecasts 2 very distinct realities, but in both cases, harsh military alternatives remain. If the administration wins the midterms, they gain a perceived mandate to aggressively hit those dual-use targets if provoked, without any political restraint. Conversely, if they lose the midterms, that could result in unbound executive orders, basically using a pen and phone strategy to force a military victory, completely free from the burden of future re-election.
Beyond just direct strikes, there are several unconventional warfare tactics that stay on the table. This includes tactics like heavily arming the domestic opposition right within Iran, or, arming Kurdish factions, even despite really strong objections from allies like Turkey. The ultimate objective of spreading weapons into Iranian cities is sweeping destabilization. Basically, it's meant to ensure that Iran never achieves nuclear power status.
Which really leaves us with a highly provocative question. Can long-term global security truly be managed when foreign military strategy is so tightly bound to domestic election cycles? Think about it. When military doctrines are dictated by the fear of losing a midterm, the implications for global stability are just vast. It's a deeply sobering intersection of geopolitics and local voting booths. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and we will see you next time.